She thought she was just buying a homeless man a warm meal. It cost her $14.50, money she desperately needed for her daughter's medicine. She didn't do it for praise. She didn't do it for a reward. In fact, 10 minutes after she paid that tab, she was fired for it. But Maya had no idea that the shivering old man in the corner wasn't just a beggar. He was a man with a secret so massive it would bring the city's greediest elites to their knees. And when a lawyer walked into the diner the next day, holding a single brass key, Maya's life didn't just change. It exploded into a war over a hidden empire. Who was the old man? And what did that key actually open? The answer is more shocking than you can believe. The rain battered against the cracked windows of the Rusty Spoon diner, a relentless grey rhythm that matched Maya's internal panic. It was 9:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. The diner smelled of stale grease, burnt coffee, and despair. Maya adjusted her apron, wincing as the fabric rubbed against the bruise on her hip, a souvenir from bumping into the counter during the lunch rush. She checked her pocket. She had $42 in tips. Her rent was due in 3 days, and she was short by $200. Worse, the pharmacy had called again. Her daughter, Lily, needed her asthma inhaler refilled, and insurance was fighting the claim. Maya, stop daydreaming and wipe down table 4. The voice belonged to Rick, the manager. Rick was a man who sweated grease and bled bitterness. He stood behind the counter, scrolling on his phone, watching the few customers with suspicious, narrowed eyes. "On it, Rick," Maya said, keeping her voice level. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She grabbed her rag and moved to the table, but the bell above the door chimed. A gust of cold wind swept through the diner, carrying wet leaves and the smell of ozone. Standing in the doorway was a figure that made the few patrons look up and then quickly look away in disgust. He was old. Ancient, really. His coat was 3 sizes too big, stained with mud and patched with duct tape. His grey beard was matted, and his shoes were wrapped in plastic bags to keep the water out. He stood there, trembling, water dripping from the brim of his hat onto the linoleum floor. "We're closing in 15 minutes, Rick shouted from the back, not even looking up. "Kitchen's cold, coffee only." The old man flinched as if he'd been struck. He took a hesitant step inside, his eyes scanning the room with a heartbreaking mixture of hunger and fear. He looked at Maya. His eyes were a startling, piercing blue, oddly clear amidst the grime of his face. "Just a coffee, please," the man whispered. His voice sounded like dry leaves being crushed. "And maybe, do you have any soup left?" Maya's heart clenched. She looked at Rick. Rick was glaring now. "Show me the money first, Pop," Rick sneered, walking around the counter. "I'm not running a charity here. You got cash?" The old man's shaking hands went into his deep pockets. He pulled out a handful of change. Pennies, a few nickels, a button, and a piece of lint. He placed it on the counter, counting it with agonizing slowness. 30. 45. 50. It wasn't enough, not even for the coffee. Rick laughed, a cruel, barking sound. "Get out, you're short, and you're dripping on my floor. Go on, beat it." The old man's shoulders slumped. He began to scrape the coins back into his hand, his dignity shattering piece by piece in front of everyone. "Wait." Maya stepped forward. She didn't look at Rick. She looked at the old man. "Sit down," she said softly, pointing to a booth near the radiator. "Table 6 is warm." "Maya," Rick warned, his voice low and dangerous. "If you feed him, you're paying for it. Full price. No employee discount." "I know," Maya said. She reached into her apron, her fingers brushing the $42 she needed for Lily's medicine and the rent. She pulled out a 20. It felt like physically pulling a piece of her soul out. But she couldn't let him leave. Not in this rain. Not with that look in his eyes. "I'm paying," she said, slapping the bill on the counter. "Give him the clam chowder, the roast beef sandwich, and a fresh pot of coffee. Keep the change." Rick snatched the bill. "Your funeral, sweetheart." Maya guided the man to the booth. "My name is Maya," she said, setting down a glass of water. "What's yours?" The man looked up at her, and for a second the trembling stopped. He studied her face as if he were memorizing it. "Arthur," he said. "My name is Arthur." For the next hour, Maya ignored Rick's glares. She watched Arthur eat. He didn't eat like a man who was starving. He ate with a strange, precise etiquette, wiping his mouth carefully between bites, holding the spoon properly despite his shaking hands. When he was finished, the rain had stopped. Arthur stood up. He looked healthier, straighter. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. He placed it on the table, covering it with a napkin. "You have a kind heart, Maya," Arthur said. His voice was stronger now. "The world tries to break people like you. Don't let it." "It was just soup, Arthur." She smiled sadly. "No," he said, staring deep into her eyes. "It was mercy. Mercy is rare currency." He turned and walked out the door, disappearing into the night. Maya went to clear the table. She lifted the napkin. Underneath, there was no money. There was only a business card. It was thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold-embossed lettering. It had no name, just a symbol, a lion holding a shield, and a phone number written in red ink on the back. "What did he leave you?" Rick sneered, walking by. "Lice?" "Nothing," Maya said, slipping the card into her pocket. "Good," Rick said, "because you're fired." Maya froze. "What?" "I told you," Rick said, crossing his arms. "I don't want bums in here attracting rats. You defied me in front of customers. Pack your stuff. Get out." Maya stood there, the sounds of the diner fading into a high-pitched ring. Fired. She had $12 to her name. Lily needed medicine. The rent was due. She walked out into the cold night, clutching the business card, tears streaming down her face. She had helped Arthur. But who was going to help her? The next morning, the sun was shining, but Maya's world was dark. She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the eviction notice she had found taped to her door that morning. Lily was in the other room, coughing in her sleep. Maya had spent the night applying to every job she could find on her cracked phone screen, but nobody was hiring immediately. She looked at the business card Arthur had left. She had almost thrown it away, but something about the weight of it felt important. She dialed the number. It rang once, twice, then a click. "The Hawthorne firm," a crisp female voice answered. "Please hold." Before Maya could speak, the line went dead. She stared at the phone. The Hawthorne firm. That was the biggest, most aggressive law firm in the city. They represented billionaires, oil tycoons, and politicians. Why would a homeless man have their number? A knock on her door made her jump. It was a heavy, authoritative knock. Maya's stomach dropped. The landlord. It had to be. She walked to the door, wiping her eyes, preparing to beg for a few more days. She opened it. It wasn't the landlord. Standing in her hallway, looking completely out of place in her run-down apartment complex, was a man in a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Maya made in a year. He was tall, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He held a silver briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Behind him stood two large men in black suits, security. "Maya Lynn?" the man asked. His voice was smooth, professional. "Yes?" Maya stammered, gripping the doorframe. "Who are you? I don't have any money for collectors." The man allowed a small, polite smile. I am not a collector, Miss Lynn. My name is Silas Henderson. I am the senior partner at the Hawthorne firm. May we come in?" Maya was too stunned to refuse. She stepped back, and the three men filled her tiny living room. Silas Henderson placed the silver briefcase on her wobbly coffee table. He didn't sit. "I understand you met an acquaintance of mine last night," Silas said. "A Mr. Arthur." Maya's eyes widened. "The homeless man. Is he in trouble? Look, I just bought him soup. I didn't know he was... Is he a criminal?" Silas chuckled softly. "Criminal? No. Eccentric? Certainly. Arthur is difficult. He likes to test the waters." "I don't understand," Maya said. "Arthur isn't homeless, Maya," Silas said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Arthur is Arthur Sterling, as in Sterling Industries." The air left the room. Sterling Industries owned half the skyline. They built ships, skyscrapers, and software. The owner was a recluse, a billionaire who hadn't been seen in public for 10 years. He was wearing plastic bags on his feet, Maya whispered. "A test," Silas said simply. "Arthur is dying, Maya. He has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He has no children. His wife passed years ago. For the last 6 months, he has been wandering the city in disguise, looking for one thing." "What?" "Humanity," Silas said. "He has been kicked out of restaurants, spat on, and ignored by thousands of people. He visited 15 establishments yesterday. 14 of them threw him out. You were the only one who fed him. You were the only one who paid for him out of your own pocket when you had nothing to spare." Silas unlocked the handcuffs on his wrist. He spun the dials on the briefcase. Click, click. The lid popped open. Inside there was no money. There was a single, heavy brass key resting on velvet. It looked old, Victorian style, with intricate carvings on the bow. "Arthur passed away 3 hours ago," Silas said gently. Maya gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh God." "He passed peacefully, but before he died, he updated his will one last time, at 11:10 p.m. last night." Silas picked up the key. "He left you this?" "What is it?" Maya asked, trembling. "This," Silas said, handing her the cold metal, "is the key to 404 Blackwood Lane. It is the original Sterling estate. The contents of the house are yours. The property is yours. Everything inside the property lines is yours." "I can't take this," Maya said, tears welling up again. "I just bought him soup." "Arthur was very clear," Silas said. He said, "She gave me her last $20. I'm giving her my last legacy." However, Silas's expression darkened. The professional mask slipped slightly. "There is a complication." "What complication?" Maya asked. "Arthur has a nephew," Silas explained. "Grant Sterling. He is not a kind man. He believed he was the sole heir. He is currently residing at 404 Blackwood Lane, and he refuses to leave. He claims Arthur was senile." Silas pulled a document from the briefcase. "Grant is powerful, Maya. He has his own lawyers. He will try to crush you. But Arthur gave you the key. Possession is 9/10 of the law, but in this case, the key opens something specific inside the house that proves your claim. We just don't know what it opens." Silas looked at her. "If you accept this, you are entering a war. Grant will come for you. But if you walk away, the estate, and the fortune hidden inside it, goes to a man who would have kicked Arthur into the gutter." Maya looked at her daughter's room. She thought of Rick's sneering face. She thought of Arthur's sad blue eyes. She closed her hand around the brass key. It was warm now. "I'm not walking away," Maya said. 2 hours later, Maya sat in the back of Silas Henderson's black town car. The leather seats were softer than her bed. They drove out of the city, past the suburbs, and into the old wooded hills of Blackwood. The trees here were thick and ancient, creating a tunnel of green and brown over the road. Maya nervously twisted the brass key in her fingers. "What do I do when we get there?" Maya asked. "You enter," Silas said, looking at his tablet. "I have served Grant with the eviction notice and the copy of the will electronically. He knows you are coming. He will be angry. Do not let him intimidate you. The security team is with us." The car slowed. They turned onto a gravel driveway that wound up a steep hill. At the top, the trees broke, revealing the house. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress. It was a Gothic revival mansion, built of dark grey stone, with turrets and high-arched windows, but it was clearly in disrepair. Vines choked the east wing. One of the windows was boarded up. The garden was a jungle of thorns. It looked haunted, angry, and magnificent. "This is it," Maya whispered. "The Sterling estate." Silas nodded. "It has been in the family for 100 years. As the car pulled up to the massive oak front doors, Maya saw a red sports car parked haphazardly on the lawn, tearing up the grass. Standing on the front steps was a man. He looked to be in his early 30s, wearing a white polo shirt and holding a golf club. He was handsome in a sharp, cruel way. This was Grant Sterling. The car stopped. The security detail got out first. Silas opened Maya's door. "Ready?" Silas asked. Maya took a breath. "Ready." She stepped out. The air smelled of pine and impending rain. Grant Sterling walked down the steps, swinging the golf club lazily. He stopped 3 feet from Maya, looking her up and down with a sneer that reminded her terrifyingly of Rick. "So," Grant laughed, a hollow sound. "This is the waitress? The angel of the diner?" He spat on the ground near her shoe. Uncle Arthur really lost his mind at the end. "Mr. Sterling," Silas interjected, stepping forward, "you have been notified. This property now belongs to Miss Lynn. You are trespassing." Grant ignored Silas. He leaned in close to Maya. She could smell expensive cologne and scotch. "Listen to me, little girl," Grant hissed. "I don't know what game you played on a dying old man, but you're not keeping this place. This is my birthright. My lawyers are already filing an injunction. You might have a piece of paper, but I have the money to bury you in court for the next 20 years. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run. She wanted to apologize, but then she felt the jagged edge of the key in her palm. "I didn't play a game," Maya said, her voice shaking but loud. "I showed him kindness, something you clearly don't know anything about." Grant's face turned red. He gripped the golf club tighter. The security guard stepped closer, hands hovering near their jackets. "Get out of my way," Grant snarled. "I'm not leaving until I get what's mine." "The house isn't yours, Grant," Silas said calmly. "But you are welcome to take your personal effects. You have 1 hour. Grant laughed again. "You think you've won? You think this key means anything?" He pointed the club at the brass key in Maya's hand. Arthur was a paranoid old bat. He filled this house with traps and riddles. You'll never find the money. You'll just inherit a pile of rotting stones and a tax bill you can't pay. He turned and stormed back into the house, leaving the front door wide open. "He's right about one thing," Silas said quietly to Maya. "The estate is cash poor. The accounts are empty. Arthur liquidated everything before he died." Maya froze. "What?" "The money," Silas said. "Millions of dollars. It's not in a bank. It's somewhere in that house, or on the grounds. Arthur hid it, and he left you the key to find it. So if I don't find it, then you have a mansion you can't afford to heat, and Grant will eventually sue you into bankruptcy to take it back," Silas confirmed. "The hunt starts now, Maya." Maya looked at the dark, gaping mouth of the front door. She wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. She was fighting a treasure hunt against a man who wanted to destroy her. She walked up the steps and crossed the threshold. The interior was cold. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light coming through the dirty windows. The foyer was massive, dominated by a grand staircase. But what caught Maya's eye wasn't the staircase. It was a painting above the fireplace. It was a portrait of Arthur, years younger, looking stern and powerful. And in the painting, he was holding something. Maya walked closer, squinting. In the painted hand of Arthur Sterling, he was holding a small wooden box with a brass lock. The lock had a shape. Maya looked at the key in her hand. The shape of the key bit matched the shape of the lock in the painting perfectly. He hid it in plain sight, Maya whispered. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the floor above, the sound of glass breaking. Grant was tearing the place apart. "We need to find that box," Maya said, turning to Silas. "Before he does." "Where do we look?" Silas asked. "The library," Maya said, intuition flashing through her. "Arthur told me he liked to read while he drank his coffee. He said, 'The best secrets are hidden between the pages.' Is there a library?" "East Wing," Silas said. "But Grant is up there." Maya tightened her grip on the key. "Then let's go say hello." The staircase groaned under their feet as Maya and Silas ascended to the second floor. The air up here was heavier, thick with the scent of mildew and old cedar. The sounds of destruction from the East Wing had stopped, replaced by an unsettling silence. "Stay behind me," Silas whispered, signaling to the two security guards to flank them. They reached the double doors of the library. One door was hanging off its hinges, splintered wood jutting out like broken teeth. Maya stepped through the threshold and gasped. It was a massacre of literature. The library was a magnificent, two-story room with a spiral staircase leading to a gallery of books. But thousands of volumes had been pulled from the shelves. They lay in heaps on the Persian rug, spines broken, pages torn out and scattered like confetti. It looked less like a room and more like a crime scene. In the center of the chaos sat Grant. He was sitting in a high-backed leather wing chair, a bottle of Arthur's vintage brandy in one hand and a fire poker in the other. He looked up as they entered, his eyes glassy and wild. "You're late," Grant slurred, gesturing with the bottle. "I've already checked the fiction section. Nothing. No money, no diamonds, just words." "You're destroying history, Grant," Silas said, his voice cold with professional disdain. "This vandalism will be deducted from any settlement you think you're entitled to." Grant laughed, standing up unsteadily. He kicked a first edition of Dickens across the room. "Settlement? I'm looking for the stash, Silas. The old man was a hoarder. He didn't trust banks. He told me once when I was 10 that the only safe place for gold is where stories keep it warm. He was mocking me then, and he's mocking me now from the grave." He turned his gaze to Maya. The menace in his eyes had sharpened. "And you," he sneered, taking a step toward her. "The waitress. Do you know why he picked you? It wasn't because you're special. It's because you're desperate. He liked to play with desperate things. He watched them squirm. He didn't play with me," Maya said, her voice trembling but defiant. "He helped me, and I helped him." "Did you?" Grant circled her, the fire poker dragging on the floor with a metallic hiss. "Or did you just spot a mark, a senile old man with deep pockets? I've had my investigators looking into you, Maya Lynn. Single mother, eviction notices piling up, a sick kid. You're not a Samaritan, you're a gold digger who got lucky." Maya felt the sting of his words. They hit close to her deepest insecurities. Was she just scavenging? No. She had given that money before she knew who he was. She held on to that truth like a shield. "I gave him my last $20. Maya said quietly. "You wouldn't even give him a ride home in the rain." Grant's face twisted in rage. He raised the poker, and the two security guards instantly stepped forward, hands on their holstered tasers. Grant froze, assessing the threat. He lowered the weapon, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Fine," Grant spat. "Look for the box. I'm going to check the wine cellar. Maybe the old drunk hid his fortune in a bottle." He stormed out, shouldering past Silas. The heavy footsteps faded down the hall. "He's dangerous," Maya whispered. "He's desperate," Silas corrected. "Which makes him dangerous. We have to hurry." "Why the library, Maya? What did you see in the painting?" Maya closed her eyes, visualizing the portrait in the foyer. Arthur holding the box. But it wasn't just the box, it was the background. "In the painting," Maya said, opening her eyes. Arthur wasn't standing in front of a fireplace. He was standing in front of a window, a specific window with stained glass at the top, a red rose. She scanned the massive library. The windows were tall and draped in heavy velvet curtains. She ran to the far wall and pulled the cord of the central drape. Dust rained down, choking her. But as the fabric parted, the afternoon light filtered through a stained glass panel at the top of the arch. It was a red rose. "This is it," Maya said. She looked around the window alcove. There was a small reading table and a single built-in bookshelf, narrower than the others. "The box isn't here," Silas said, scanning the empty table. "No," Maya said, her mind racing. "Grant said Arthur told him gold is safe where stories keep it warm. It's not on the shelf. It is a book." She scanned the titles on the narrow shelf. Most were legal texts, dry and dusty. But one spine stood out. It was a dark green leather-bound book, devoid of a title. The leather was worn smooth, as if handled thousands of times. Maya reached out. Her hand hovered over the spine. She pulled it. The book didn't slide out. Instead, it clicked. A mechanism whirred inside the wall. The entire section of the bookshelf, about 2 feet wide, popped forward with a groan of wood against wood. Silas gasped. A hidden compartment. Maya pulled the false shelf open. Behind the facade of books was a small, velvet-lined cavity. And sitting there, exactly as it had been in the painting, was the wooden box. It was made of polished mahogany, inlaid with mother-of-pearl. The brass lock on the front was shaped like a lion's head, the same symbol from the business card. "You found it," Silas breathed, stepping closer. "Open it." Maya took the brass key from her pocket. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped it. She inserted the key into the lion's mouth. It fit perfectly. She turned it. Click. The lid sprang open. They both leaned in, expecting to see stacks of cash, diamonds, or bearer bonds. But the box was nearly empty. Inside, resting on the red velvet, was a single folded piece of blue stationery and a small silver USB drive. "That's it?" One of the security guards grunted from the doorway. "All that fuss for a thumb drive?" Maya picked up the letter. It was handwritten in shaky, elegant cursive. "To the one who showed me mercy, if you are reading this, you have passed the first test. You looked past the grime to see the man. Now, you must look past the greed to see the truth. The estate is not the treasure. The house is crumbling. The accounts are drained. Grant thinks I am poor. He is wrong. I liquidated everything to build something new. Something that cannot be stolen by vultures. The USB drive contains the access codes to a cryptocurrency wallet and an offshore trust. The value is substantial, but it is encrypted. The password is not written down. It is a memory of the day my wife, Elizabeth, died. I planted a tree for her that day. Find the heart of the garden. Find the tree that weeps. The password is carved into the roots. Beware the wolf in the house. He is closer than you think. Arthur. Maya looked up at Silas. The tree that weeps. A weeping willow? There is a weeping willow on the grounds, Silas said, his face pale. In the center of the conservatory garden. It was Elizabeth's favorite spot. We have to go, Maya said, clutching the USB drive and the letter. Before Grant figures it out. Wait, Silas said, looking at the letter again. Beware the wolf in the house. He is closer than you think. What does that mean? Before Maya could answer, the lights in the library flickered and died. The room plunged into grey gloom. The power, the security guard said. Someone cut the main breaker. Grant, Maya whispered. Move, Silas ordered. To the conservatory, now. The rain had returned with a vengeance, hammering against the glass roof of the conservatory like bullets. The structure was attached to the west side of the mansion, a massive glass cathedral filled with overgrown tropical plants, ferns and twisting vines. It was humid and smelled of wet earth and decay. Maya, Silas and the two guards, Bruno and Rick, not the diner manager, but a large man with a scar on his neck, moved through the jungle of plants. Their flashlights cut beams through the misty darkness. Over there, Maya pointed. In the center of the conservatory, rising from a circular bed of overgrown ivy, was a massive weeping willow. Its branches hung down like a curtain, swaying in the drafts, coming through cracked panes of glass. The tree that weeps, Maya whispered. They approached the tree. Maya pushed aside the hanging branches and knelt at the base of the massive trunk. She shone her light on the gnarled roots. There, barely visible under years of moss, was a carving. It wasn't a word. It was a date. 04 Toaster 12 99982. That's it, Maya said, her heart pounding. The date she died. That's the password. She stood up, holding the USB drive tight. We have the key. We have the password. We can leave. We can go to the police. Excellent work, Miss Lynn, Silas said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I'll call the car around to the side entrance. No need, a voice boomed from the shadows. Maya spun around. Grant stepped out from behind a row of giant ferns. He was soaking wet, his white polo shirt clinging to his frame. But he wasn't holding a golf club anymore. He was holding a sleek, black pistol. Grant, Silas shouted, stepping in front of Maya. Put it down. This is a felony. It's only a felony if there are witnesses. Grant smiled. It was a chilling, calm smile. And I don't see any witnesses. I just see trespassers. You can't shoot us all, Silas said, holding his ground. Bruno, Rick, secure him. Maya watched, expecting the two large security guards to tackle Grant. Instead, Bruno, the guard closest to Maya, turned around. He didn't look at Grant. He looked at Silas. And then, with a brutal, swift motion, he swung his heavy flashlight. Crack! The blow connected with the side of Silas's head. The lawyer crumpled to the ground without a sound, his glasses skittering across the stone floor. Maya screamed, backing away until her back hit the rough bark of the willow tree. Silas! She cried. Quiet, Bruno grunted. He pulled his own gun, not to arrest Grant, but to aim it at Maya. The second guard, Rick, looked confused for a split second, then raised his hands in surrender as Bruno trained the gun on him too. Sorry, Rick, Bruno said flatly. Grant made a better offer. 500 grand is a lot better than the hourly rate the firm pays. Grant laughed, walking forward, stepping over Silas's unconscious body. He twirled his pistol. You see, Maya, Grant said softly. Arthur warned you about the wolf. But you were looking at me. You should have been watching the hired help. Everyone has a price, even the loyal protectors. He extended his hand. Give it to me. The USB drive, and the paper. Maya clutched them to her chest. No. Don't be stupid, Grant sighed. I'll kill you. I'll kill the lawyer. I'll kill the other guard. And I'll bury you all under this rotting tree. Nobody will look for a waitress. Nobody cares. Maya looked at Bruno. His face was stone. He had sold his soul. She looked at Silas, bleeding on the floor. She looked at the terrified face of the other guard, Rick. If she refused, they died. Trembling, tears mixing with the rain dripping from the roof, Maya held out her hand. Grant snatched the USB drive and the letter. "Thank you," he mocked. He looked at the letter, shining his flashlight on the date carved into the tree. April 12th, 1982. How sentimental. He pulled a smartphone from his pocket. He plugged the USB drive into an adapter. "Let's see just how much the old man hid from me," Grant muttered, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screen. He typed in the date. Access granted. Grant's eyes widened. $30 million. In untraceable crypto. He let out a breathless, euphoric laugh. "It's mine. It's finally mine." He looked up at Maya, his eyes shining with triumph. "You were a fun diversion, Maya. But the game is over." "You got what you wanted," Maya choked out. "Let us go." Grant tilted his head. "Let you go? And have you run to the police? I don't think so." He nodded to Bruno. "Lock them in the wine cellar. It's soundproof. Then torch the conservatory. We'll say it was an electrical fire. Tragic accident." "Grant, no!" Maya screamed. Bruno grabbed Maya by the arm, his grip like iron. He shoved the other guard, Rick, forward. They dragged Silas's limp body between them. "Move!" Bruno barked. They were marched out of the conservatory, through the dark halls, and down a narrow stone staircase into the bowels of the house. The air grew colder. Bruno opened a heavy, iron-reinforced wooden door, the wine cellar. He threw Silas inside. He shoved Rick in. Then he threw Maya onto the cold stone floor. "Please," Maya begged, looking up at Bruno. "You don't have to do this." Bruno looked at her for a second, a flicker of something, maybe regret, in his eyes. But then he looked at Grant, who was waiting at the top of the stairs with the phone in his hand. "Business is business," Bruno said. He slammed the heavy door shut. The sound of the lock turning echoed like a gunshot. Maya was plunged into absolute darkness. She could hear Silas groaning in pain and Rick cursing in the corner. They were trapped, and above them, Grant was preparing to burn the evidence, and them to ash. Maya crawled through the dark until she found the door. She pounded on it until her fists bled. "Help! Help us!" But nobody answered. The walls were 3 feet of stone. She slumped against the door, sliding down to the floor. She had failed. She had lost the money. She had lost the legacy. And now she was going to lose her life. Her hand brushed against her apron pocket. She felt something hard and cold, the brass key. Grant had taken the USB drive. He had taken the letter. But in his arrogance, he had forgotten the brass key. But what good is a key, Maya thought bitterly, when you're locked in a stone box? Unless... She remembered Arthur's words from the letter. Look past the greed to see the truth. And she remembered something else, something Silas had said in the car. Arthur was paranoid. He filled this house with traps and riddles. Maya scrambled in the dark, feeling the wall next to the door. It wasn't smooth stone. It was a wine rack, rows and rows of bottles. Arthur didn't drink, Maya whispered to herself. He drank coffee. Why have a wine cellar if you don't drink? She felt the bottles, one by one. Glass, glass, glass. Then her hand touched something different. Metal. In the center of the rack, disguised as the neck of a bottle, was a small metal keyhole. It was shaped like a lion. "Silas!" Maya hissed in the dark. "Rick, wake up! Get a light!" Rick fumbled with his phone, turning on the flashlight app. The beam cut through the dusty air. Maya jammed the brass key into the false bottleneck. "Please," she prayed, "please work." She turned it. The brass key turned in the false bottleneck with a heavy mechanical thunk. For an agonizing second, nothing happened. Maya held her breath, the smell of dust and terror filling her nose. Silas groaned on the floor, his hand pressed against his bleeding head. Then, a hiss of pneumatic pressure echoed through the cellar. The entire wine rack, hundreds of bottles heavy, shuddered. Slowly, groaning against years of disuse, the heavy wooden shelving unit swung inward, scraping against the stone floor. Behind the wine rack was not a wall, but a gaping black tunnel. "A prohibition tunnel," Silas coughed, struggling to sit up. "Arthur mentioned the house was used for smuggling in the 20s. I thought it was a myth." "It's a way out," Maya said, her voice frantic. She grabbed Silas's arm. "Rick, help me get him up. We have to move." Rick, the security guard who had been betrayed by his partner, didn't hesitate. He hoisted the lawyer onto his shoulder. "I got him. Go. Lead the way with the light." They stepped into the tunnel just as the smell of smoke began to curl under the wine cellar door. Grant hadn't been lying. He had set the house on fire. Maya swept the flashlight beam across the tunnel walls. They were made of rough-hewn limestone, dripping with moisture. The air was cold and smelled of wet earth and ancient secrets. The tunnel sloped downward, deep into the bedrock of the hill. "Where does this go?" Rick asked, his voice echoing. "Away from the fire," Maya said. "That's all that matters." They moved as fast as they could on the uneven ground. The tunnel wound like a snake, turning sharply left and right. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She kept expecting to see a dead end or a cave-in. After 10 minutes of stumbling through the dark, the tunnel widened into a small, circular chamber. In the center sat a solitary wooden desk and a chair, preserved in the cool, dry air of the deep underground. On the desk sat an old-fashioned radio and a thick leather ledger. "Stop," Silas wheezed. "I need a minute." Rick set him down on the chair. Maya shone the light on the ledger. She opened it. It wasn't an accounting book. It was a log. October 4th. Grant asked about the trust fund again. I told him it was locked until he turned 40. He threw a glass against the wall. November 12th. I found evidence that Grant has been siphoning funds from the charity account. He is stealing from orphans to pay for his gambling debts. I have written him out of the will today. December 24th. I am dying. I know it. And I know he is waiting for me to die. I have moved the assets. I have created the honey pot. If he tries to take it by force, he will trigger the trap. Maya looked up at Silas. "The honey pot. The USB drive." Silas adjusted his glasses, which were cracked from the blow. A grim smile touched his lips. Arthur was a genius. "Maya, that USB drive doesn't contain access codes to a crypto wallet." "It doesn't?" "No," Silas said. "Arthur built a fake digital ledger. It looks like millions of dollars. But the moment someone inputs that date, the password you found on the tree, it doesn't unlock funds." "What does it do?" "It executes a command," Silas explained. "It uploads the user's location, IP address, and biometric data directly to the FBI's Cybercrimes Division, along with a packet of evidence proving Grant's history of embezzlement and money laundering. By plugging that drive into his phone, Grant just confessed to federal crimes and pinged his exact location to the authorities." Maya stared at the book. "He didn't just leave me the money. He left me the justice." "We have to keep moving," Rick urged, looking back down the tunnel. The smoke is getting pulled in by the draft. The fire is growing. Maya grabbed the ledger. I'm taking this. It's the proof. They pressed on. The tunnel began to slope upward now. The air changed, smelling less like earth and more like rain and pine needles. They could hear a dull roar in the distance. The river, Maya realized. The estate backs up to the Blackwood River. This tunnel must dump out at the old boathouse. They rounded a final bend and saw a heavy iron grate blocked by a rusted padlock. Beyond the grate, Maya could see the grey, churning water of the river and the rain falling in sheets. We're trapped, Rick said, pulling on the grate. It's rusted shut. Maya felt the panic rising again. The smoke was thicker now, stinging her eyes. They were so close. She looked at the padlock. It was an old, heavy brass lock. She looked at the key in her hand, the key that had opened the front door, the key that had opened the wine cellar. Arthur said the key opens his legacy, Maya whispered. She jammed the key into the rusted padlock. She twisted it with both hands, straining against the corrosion. Snap! The lock broke open. Rick kicked the grate open, and they tumbled out into the pouring rain, gasping for fresh air. They were on the riverbank, hidden by the tall reeds, about 200 yards downhill from the mansion. Maya looked back up the hill. The sight broke her heart. The Sterling estate was burning. Flames licked out of the library windows, climbing up the stone walls toward the roof. The smoke billowed black against the grey sky, and standing on the patio, illuminated by the fire of his own making, was Grant. He was shouting into his phone, pacing frantically. He knows, Silas said, watching from the tall grass. The trap sprung. He's realized the accounts are locked. He's going to run, Rick said. No, Maya said, her eyes hard. He's not going anywhere. The wail of sirens cut through the sound of the rain. First one, then 3, then a dozen. Blue and red lights flashed through the trees at the bottom of the driveway, racing up toward the burning mansion. Grant stopped pacing. He looked down the hill at the approaching cavalcade of police cars. He dropped his phone. He looked trapped, a rat caught in a burning cage. He's going to try the back way, Rick said. He'll come down here to the river. It's his only escape route. We need to hide, Silas said. He still has the gun. No, Maya said. She looked at the burning house, then at the ledger in her arms. She thought of the homeless man who had shared soup with her. She thought of the way Grant had spat on her. She was done hiding. Rick, Maya said. Do you have your radio? Yeah, Rick said, tapping his belt. But Bruno is on the other end. Not that radio, Maya said. The police frequency. Security channels usually monitor them. Rick pulled a small earpiece from his pocket and fiddled with the settings on his belt unit. I can patch into the emergency channel. Give it to me, Maya said. She took the radio. She pressed the transmit button. This is Maya Lynn, she said, her voice steady over the static. I am at the riverbank below the estate. I have Silas Henderson and a witness. Grant Sterling is armed and attempting to flee toward the boathouse. He has committed arson and attempted murder. There was a pause. Then a crackly voice responded. Copy that, Ms. Lynn. Units are setting up a perimeter. Stay low. We are moving in. Grant was sprinting down the hill now, sliding in the mud, heading straight for them. He saw the open grate of the tunnel. He saw them standing in the rain. He raised his gun, his face twisted in a mask of pure hatred. You! Grant screamed. You ruined it! You ruined everything! He fired. Bang! The bullet kicked up mud 2 feet from Maya. Rick tackled Maya and Silas to the ground behind a fallen log. Give me the key! Grant shrieked, stumbling closer. There's a boat in the shed. Give me the key! He didn't know the brass key was for the house. He thought it opened everything. Maya lay in the mud, clutching the key. Grant was 10 feet away. He leveled the gun at Rick's head. "Stand up," Grant ordered. "Give it to me or I blow his brains out." Maya stood up slowly, her hands raised. The rain plastered her hair to her face. She looked Grant in the eye. "You want the key?" she asked. "Give it to me." "Catch," Maya said. She threw the heavy brass key, but she didn't throw it to him. She threw it as hard as she could, over his head, into the churning, dark waters of the Blackwood River. Splash! Grant screamed, an animalistic sound of despair. He turned, looking at the water, instinctively lunging as if he could dive in and find it. That moment of distraction was all they needed. "Now!" a voice shouted from the tree line. "Drop the weapon! Federal agents!" Grant spun around, blinded by high-intensity tactical lights. Red laser dots danced on his chest. 6 SWAT officers emerged from the reeds, rifles raised. Grant froze. He looked at the river. He looked at the burning house. He looked at Maya. He dropped the gun. He fell to his knees in the mud, sobbing. As they cuffed him and dragged him away, Silas sat up, wiping blood from his forehead. "You threw the key away," Silas said, watching the police lead Grant up the hill. "Maya, that key was... It was just a piece of metal," Maya said, watching the ripples in the water fade. "It opened the door to the truth. We found the truth. I don't need the key anymore." "But the house," Rick said, pointing at the inferno. "It's gone." Maya looked at the mansion. The roof collapsed, with a spectacular shower of sparks. The Sterling estate was history. "Arthur told me," Maya said softly, "that the only safe place for gold is where stories keep it warm. The house wasn't the legacy. The story was, and we just finished writing it." 6 months later. The sun was shining on a crisp Tuesday morning. Maya stood on the sidewalk, wiping down the gleaming glass window of a brand-new storefront. The sign above the door was hand-painted in gold leaf, the Golden Key Cafe. "Hey, boss," a voice called from inside. Maya turned. Rick was behind the counter, wearing a crisp white apron, brewing a fresh pot of espresso. He looked happier than he ever had in a security uniform. "Don't call me boss, Rick," Maya smiled. "We're partners." "Table 4 needs a refill," Rick grinned. Maya walked inside. The cafe was full. It was warm, smelling of cinnamon and fresh bread. In the corner booth, the best seat in the house, sat an older gentleman. It was Silas. He was retired now, reading a book. Maya walked over and poured him a fresh cup. "How's business?" Silas asked, closing his book. "Booming," Maya said. "We sold out of the clam chowder by noon." "Good," Silas nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This came for you today, from the insurance company." Maya took the envelope. She already knew what it was. The payout from the Sterling estate fire. Because the arson was proven to be Grant's act, the insurance policy Arthur had taken out years ago remained valid for the beneficiary. It was a check for $2 million. But that wasn't the only thing in the envelope. There was a smaller note, attached by Silas. "The land on Blackwood Lane has been cleared. The city has approved your permit." Maya smiled. She wasn't going to rebuild the mansion. She was building a shelter, the Arthur Sterling home for the forgotten. A place where nobody would be turned away for lack of money. A place where a bowl of soup was always free. The bell above the door chimed. A young woman walked in, looking tired, clutching a stack of resumes. She looked at the menu board, counting the coins in her palm, her face falling when she realized she didn't have enough. Maya didn't wait. She walked around the counter. "Hi," Maya said warmly. "I'm Maya. Take a seat. Coffee and soup are on the house today." The woman looked up, startled, tears welling in her eyes. "Really? Why?" Maya looked at the painting she had hung on the wall. A portrait of an old man, with sad blue eyes and a kind smile. "Because someone once told me," Maya said, "that mercy is a rare currency, and I'm rich enough to spend it." Maya's story proves that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can unlock the biggest doors. She thought she was losing everything when she gave away her last $20, but she was actually investing in her destiny. Grant Sterling had all the money and power in the world, but his greed was the very thing that locked him in a cage. In the end, the real key wasn't the brass one that sank to the bottom of the river. It was the compassion in Maya's heart. What would you have done if you were in Maya's shoes? Would you have thrown the key? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and remember, kindness always comes back around.